Hello, and welcome to LoreMasters Investigation, a new show in the Fandom Roulette channel where we take deep philosophical dives into your tabletop role-playing game questions. I am Cody.
And I'm Joe, and I'm feeling embarrassed, Cody. You said when you talked to me about when we talked about this, you said deep dives.
Yeah.
So I'm wearing my swim trunks and my snorkel.
Oh no!
And you're saying that it's a deep philosophical dive?
Yeah. Sorry. The metaphors implied.
The metaphor is implied.
No, it was figurative. I don't know English.
I thought we were gonna go diving. I was super excited to learn and see the treasures beneath the waves. With my snorkel
in the water in your house.
Yeah, no, hey,
because we're all inside.
It's true. Hey, you never know. There could be treasures down below there.
Oh no, I don't want to know if my house has fucking deep water treasure underneath it.
What if it's like the Goonies situation, and you have?
I mean, that would be cool, but also at the same time, I've had so much water damage with this fucking house. I don't want water to come near my house at all.
What if it was like the water telling you though, like, go down there, Cody. Oh. There's pirate treasure.
You know what? I never considered that, and now that you're saying it,
you're still not considering
I'm all
it?
in.
Oh, you're all in now.
I'm all in.
Now I've changed my mind. Bust up that beautiful flooring that you put into your house.
Yeah.
Just smash her all up.
Yeah.
So anyway, so okay, so I'm changing out of it. I'm putting on my normal podcasting clothes.
You're gonna put on your nice pleather jacket. You've got a nice little thing of bourbon, a little pipe cigar.
Don't
that
tempt
you
me, Cody.
puff out of. What?
Don't tempt me. I would do that.
That's how I imagine philosophers, though. Like in my weird brain space, that this is totally not real, but how I imagine them is they're sitting on a nice leather chair next to a fireside with another person dressed very similarly. Like they're wearing suit jackets, maybe a little done up suit jacket, and they've got
As a person who knew a fair number of philosophers, they do enjoy their whiskey.
Sure,
but I think it's because they've seen too far, they've seen too deep.
And they need the alcohol to reduce the effects of the eldritch horrors that they have seen.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
But anyway, what are we up to, Cody?
So on our first episode, we have a fan concept to talk about. Ooh. So it's not really a question because I don't want to turn this into... So the idea behind this LoreMasters investigation is that we're not able to answer these questions with a yes or a no or a 1 to 2 sentence response. This is something that we're going to spend the whole 30-ish minutes of the podcast talking about. So the topic at hand is pacing, and what maybe the question we're asking isn't necessarily the perfect paced game or anything like that, but just the idea of what is good pacing for you, and what does pacing look like in an ideal scenario for you? Because first hot take of all of LoreMasters Investigation, I don't think there is such a thing as the perfect paced game. I think it's an impossible endeavor, and you'll never hit it, even if you want to. Art.
Whoa.
The whole concept of being a game master or a lore master or dungeon master, it's subjective, and the things that you do it's going to affect people differently. The games that I run for you and my friends are very different than the games that are run online and, done by even the great DMs of our time run their games differently from the way I do.
Sure. So,
I don't think there is a perfect pace game, but I do think there are ways to enhance pacing.
Well, so my take is I feel like perfect pacing is based on your resting heartbeat. and then you have to get it to a certain level. No, I think I would agree with you that it's an incredibly difficult needle to thread for a lot of reasons. I think mainly too because it's like certain players are there for certain reasons.
Exactly. Not everyone is going to be coming to your table with the exact same thing in mind. Like, I know one of our players, I won't name them, or I won't name drop them, but like one of them is like, they like combat and they like that crunchiness of D&D 5e at times. So, and you know me, I run fairly combat light games, at least recently. I used to do combat all the time. But so I have to, I have to occasionally bring out the battle mats and all that stuff to make sure that, my one player who really likes combat in tabletop role-playing games gets their fix on that. So, yeah, totally agree. Everyone's there for a different reason.
And then I feel like the thing, too, is sometimes you also have to pay attention to, like, what a player's world was, like, what a player's experience was like before they came to a table. And what I mean by this is... I feel like so many of us are introduced to like fantasy role-playing games through video games.
That's how I was.
Where you are the only player,
Yep.
And so it's like, oh man, I can run from this store to over to the restaurant and then back over this direction. And I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to talk to every single person who lives in the town, and I'm going to get all the side quests and this and that and the other thing. And then you look up and there's like 4 other people sitting at a table with you,
Right. I mean, you just described the way I'm playing the Final Fantasy VII remake. And I don't know how you did that because I've set those videos to private.
That is categorically untrue. But I mean, you know what I mean though?
Yeah. For me, that was one of the big hurdles of becoming a game master. Is I was coming at it from video games, right? Like I'm born and raised on video games. I think I came out of the womb with a Game Boy in my hand.
I'm gonna just do some quick math on that.
I think the Game Boy was out by then.
I think it was too.
But I mean, that's been my entire life. So when I finally got into tabletop role-playing games, like, I was trying my hardest to be like, what is the thing that I can do to make these games perfect? And it was like these things that like I was trying to control and trying to change. And I think the best thing you can do for yourself as a game master is to kind of let go of the notion that you can control everything, because realistically you control about, I would argue, 60% of what's going on.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the 40% is on your players. So
sure.
The best thing you can do in this case, if you're looking to strive for good pacing, is to work on you. Do the things that you can do to make your games better.
Yeah. I would also say, I don't know necessarily, like, I would also highly recommend that you think of the strategic planning of your sessions, and like just kind of pay attention to how the table is doing as like a group,
Yeah.
Like sometimes there might be like 1 or 2 people who are going like a million places, and another player who just was like, I just want to like grab a drink at the bar and go to bed, which is like perfectly fine. Just pay attention to how people are interacting, and maybe consider like putting some, I don't necessarily want to say limits, because this should be like an unlimited world, but like just the notion of like, well, it would be impossible for you to go to all of these places in like a single day.
Right.
I think that could help with the pacing as well.
Yeah, because I think, and you're hitting on a very important point, which I think is also important. It's kind of side adjacent to pacing, but I think it's part of what makes good pacing, and that's spotlight.
Yeah.
And so for those of you who, I'm sure everyone knows what a spotlight is, but the way we're referring to it is in the kind of theater way. And that, or at least in my head, it comes from theater. Granted, I came from technical theater and art and all that
But hey, that's still
bullshit.
theater, man.
But the idea is that in a tabletop role-playing game, you know, everyone is the star, so everybody should be getting in that spotlight. And everybody, like, ideally what you want to do is have people in the spotlight for roughly the same amount of time, for the same reasons that, like, with pacing, like your example, like someone wants to go here and there and check all the different shops, and like the other person's like, yeah, I just, like, I'm tired. We've had a rough adventuring day. We got to go to bed. So like finding that balance of being like, all right, well, it's not quite feasible, or maybe truncating some of like the, the small talk of going to a different store.
Yeah.
And just being like, yeah, if you wanted to shop there, these are the things that are on sale.
Yeah.
The person's very nice, and like speeding certain parts up that are kind of in your eyes unimportant.
And I think once again this goes back to like the video game thing.
Right.
Like, you know, there are some video games where there are like business hours, quote unquote. But like for the most part, like there are certain games out there where like every single store is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you don't have to sleep for any mechanical reasons.
Right.
You know, in Pokemon, I don't think you sleep ever. Like,
yeah.
Right. Or it's implied that you're sleeping maybe when like the game is turned off or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, or like, I think that's kind of true in The Witcher. Like, I don't think Witchers have like locked time, like stores are locked down ever, right? I haven't played enough of The Witcher, but like I know Skyrim it
Witcher, is. Yeah, so in Witcher 3 at least, because like I didn't play a whole lot of the second one. And I never played the first one just because that was before my time as a PC gamer.
Did you adjust your glasses there? Or?
I did. I did a little nod and like a, yeah.
I heard it through the computer screen.
But there are times like some shops are closed during the night, depending on where you are. But like, you know, also depending on where you are, like an inn's always going to be open. Because, like, people are coming in at all times of the day, looking for a place to stay, looking for a drink. But yeah, depending on where you are, there are shops that close depending on what time of day. And the thing that's weird about Geralt is it kind of implies that he sleeps, but when you're playing the game, all you do is, like, the meditation, where, like, you get your potions back, you get your, you know, you can regain your health to max and all that stuff. It's a little weird, but yeah, adding a little bit of that can ease people who want to do the video game route and be like, I want to go to all the stores and grab all the side quests and all that stuff, because Lord knows that, like, if only one person is on board and the rest are, like, trying to, like, move things along, like, that can be frustrating to, like, basically just watch this, like, hour-long vignette of somebody like going and rescuing someone's cat out of a tree so that they get a quest, or, you know, whatever nonsense you've decided to throw in front of that one character. But yeah, I think it's also worth mentioning that we've been talking about this in a nebulous concept. I think pacing is super critical to your game.
Yeah.
I think poor pacing leads to boredom and confusion, and ultimately leads to, you know, that problem that some people have where it's like, oh, everyone at the table is like on their phone except for whoever's like in the spotlight at the moment.
Sure.
And which especially for a new GM, or you don't know your players well enough to understand like what exactly is going on, that can be a huge bummer. So I think in this case, good pacing will alleviate some of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
And then I think one last thing too, especially in terms of pacing and combat, See, it's funny because it's like I like combat as much as the next person, but like I feel like I have a personal combat limit, which is to say, like, you know, like if it's going past an hour, like I'm starting to slowly over time just be like,
Yeah, I just hit the thing. Fuck it. Let's kill these things and move on.
I think it's important to, and I feel like, you know, we've all figured, like, you know, obviously there's different techniques and things you can use to this, but just, you know, I think things like having like either like an on deck circle or things like that, just to have the next person thinking about what they want to do is really helpful as well.
Right.
Just so you don't necessarily have people who are like, it's your turn. They're like, blah, 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 blah. Because sometimes depending on your class, there can be what's what I'm looking for.
Decision paralysis.
Thank you.
The concept of like, especially with like in D&D 5th edition, like with the spellcasters, it's like, you know, if you're a druid or a cleric, you have access in most cases to 10 plus spells that you can cast at any given time. And that happens a lot where you're nervous because you want to be like the pro gamer in the room, right? Like you want to make the good power play. You want to do right for your party. Because ultimately, if any of them die, your chance of survival significantly goes down.
Sure.
And depending on who your GM might be, it might be, you know, someone who's a little more like grittier or is more open to like characters dying at the whim of the dice. Like you want to like it immediately, like at least in my brain, granted, the mage or the wizard, not a wizard, it's a warlock. The spellcaster I'm playing right now has a very limited amount of spell slots and spells.
Sure.
So I often don't have that same level of paralysis, but even still, when I'm on my last spell slot, because I only got 2, when I'm on my last spell slot and like my whole party is like practically dying in front of me, like it can be very intense to be like, what spell's gonna be the good one?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, right? It is kind of a crazy thing. But I think like having an on-deck circle helps with that, at least a little bit.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different techniques. I know you've seen it in my games. I have changed the way we do combat in 5e at least like 17,000 different times. Because my problem with combat, at least in D&D 5e, is as soon as you start hitting more than 4 players, it becomes a slog to get through turns, right? Because you want to challenge the party, so you don't want these battles to like only last 2 turns, but also there's so many people in a turn that one turn, which is 6 seconds in D&D 5e, like takes like 30 minutes, and it's like, what happened?
Sure.
And so I know combat, at least in 5e, we're talking a lot about that because that's kind of where our hearts are in this current moment. The best thing you can do is if you can think of ways to make things faster, try them out.
Yeah.
Honestly, your best feedback for pacing in general, and this includes combat, because like I struggled with this a lot. Like I think our first campaign, I tried so many different things to make combat not take 3 hours per combat encounter. That I've tried so many things, but like your players are going to be your best source to know how you're doing in terms of pacing.
Sure.
In my honest opinion, and I am more worried about my players having fun than I am about like what kind of shit that I'm doing. Like if my party is having a good time and I'm playing D&D, in most cases I'm having a great time. Yeah. So I openly ask my players all the time, like, hey, how was last session? Like I know like me and a buddy of mine at work, we are constantly at, like, literally the day after a session, we're like, so how was the session? How was the session? And we'll talk about it, and we'll talk about, like, you know, oh, I really like this, or man, it sucked that this happened, or like, man, you know what I noticed? Like, this was happening. And your players, like, as long as you have a very, like, open, honest, and, like, good relationship with your players, they're going to be the best source to how to tweak your game. Because at the end of the day, I could tell you, like, oh, you should use the fast-slow initiative if you're playing D&D 5e, but that might not work for your group. They might not like how that plays out. It works for me, but like I said, D&D, and like art, is subjective in most cases, and you're going to find that some people just love those old D&D 5e rules, and, like, the idea of doing any kind of homebrew rules or tweaking and modifying is, like, going to ruin the experience for them. So, like, honestly, I think the first thing you need to do is to kind of shed your ego a little bit and be like, don't worry about the quote unquote perfect game, right?
Yeah.
Pace, like, worry about the things you can do to make your players have an enjoyable experience. And for pacing, this is just asking them, like, oh man, how was combat last night, right? Like, just asking them, you know, was it fast? Was it too slow? Did I need, like, just asking them, because they're going to be the ones that are like, you know, I enjoyed myself, but, like, man, whenever so-and-so player number 3 goes, it's like they have to, like, look at, like, 10 million spells, and, like, I just, like, lose focus. And, like, that's where we came up with the on-deck concept, where when we were still using initiative, or at least traditional initiative, I would call out who was coming next so that they could start thinking about their turn ahead of time. We don't do that so much anymore because we moved to the fast-slow, where basically the party can table talk and decide how they want to move themselves as a collective unit, like, ahead of time. So kind of different now, but, like, that's what I mean is, you know, and this doesn't have to be about D&D 5e. Like, maybe, you know, maybe your role-playing pacing is slow, right? You know, if you're finding your party isn't paying attention to the things that you're describing, think about removing some of the flack or the fat of what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
I personally have found that the rule of threes works pretty well. Describe the 3 main senses, sight being number 1 in most cases, as, like, a general, like, good role-playing thing. Like, you see this, you smell this, you hear this. And if they need more description, continue to give that to them. If that's enough, then keep moving on, right? So I think looking at, or asking your players how to help you with pacing is going to be a lot better than any advice I can give you. There are some things that I've learned over my experience. Like, I used to do long, boring descriptions of rooms because I was trying to mimic what Wizards of the Coast did in a lot of their early material, and, like, it's a lot of stuff to read. It's like, you find yourself in the back room of a cellar, and the stone is made of 15th century dwarven granite, and the molding is spectacular, made with elven wood. And, like, no one cares about that. Like, someone might, and they might ask about that later, and then you can get into the dwarven granite. But at the end of the day, tell them what they see. Tell them maybe what they hear, because that's usually the secondary. And then maybe, like, what they smell or what they taste, or, you know, what they feel in the room, you know?
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, work on you. I know this is kind of and this is kind of how I was hoping LoreMasters Investigation would go, is that we would end up just talking about pacing and, like, the things that helped us. So I have a question for you specifically now that we've been thinking about it.
Yeah.
And this is for me. We'll use this as a test example. in our last session,
Yes.
we were... What were we doing?
Someone
My
became
brain
a vampire.
Yes, one of the party members became a vampire, and you guys were just finishing up the quote-unquote death house that I had slightly took references and took ideas off of Curse of Strahd's death house and applied it to your game. Yeah, a little behind the scenes there. So how did you feel about the pacing of that episode? Granted, we run a very mystery noir style game, so like,
yeah,
this is going to be a little different for everybody, but how did you, as a player, how did you feel about the pacing of the last session? And feel free to be as thick as you want to lay it.
Yeah, no, I thought it worked really well. I have been enjoying the kind of balance of, in recent sessions of our, combats to not combat situation.
Okay.
So like I think not this last session but the session before it, we went through 3 combat encounters in one session, which is like unheard of. And granted, neither of them were like gigantic or anything, but
yeah, none of them were like crazy set pieces that, but like they were still sizable.
Yeah,
you had
for
to
sure.
fight like 5 shadows, and then one room had like 7 skeletons and then like a minotaur skeleton.
Yeah.
So like, wasn't anything to sneeze at for a level 4 party.
Yeah, I thought it went well, and then I thought that the pacing of the party afterwards was really effective as well. And once again, I think it was because you were doing a great job of moving that spotlight periodically around. And it helped too that a couple of players were like teaming up in their attempts or in what they were doing. But yeah, at no point did I feel like anyone was getting, overshined or undershone. It felt like we all were given a pretty equal footing, especially my character who like immediately faffed off from the party and went and like was talking to like the help basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was nice. So
see, and that's all it takes. Granted, that was very nice and flattering, so I appreciate that. But if you are open and honest with your players, you will find that stuff out. I know I just did a session with the Redacted campaign that I can't talk too much about, but we're doing our first encounter in a really long time in 5e, and not that this was on the DM, but our pacing was really slow because most of us forgot how to play our characters in combat.
that's fun.
Yeah, it's because we have a monk who has a ton of different abilities. So like, like the action economy of a monk on any given turn in 5th edition is just like ludicrous. So like, I get how those turns can be like, okay, should I hit this person? Should I move and hit? Like, all those kinds of things. We do have a couple people we have a druid, so there's a lot of like spellcasting and stuff that they can provide, plus like the wild shape and being able, like having to look at different stats. Like our pacing was not, from a player side, was not top tier. We did not do it as fast as we could have, but we all had a really good time, at least as far as I know. I've talked to a few of the other players. I had a blast. I'm enjoying playing my warlock because Shatter has become my favorite spell in the whole game. It is my Cloud of Daggers. An inside joke. One of our players in the first game, we'll talk about it in a campaign diary, was in love with Cloud of Daggers. So much so that it was the only spell they would cast ever.
Yep.
And so Shatter has become the spell that is the only spell that I cast at any given moment because AoE damage is delicious, 100%.
You
love
monster.
To eat it. I am a monster, and you know what? I was even a big dumbhead and did it in underground.
Oh, double monster.
And blew out a wall that may or may not have had support beams in it.
Triple
So
monster.
We'll find out how that played out. Oh, I'm a literal monster in that game. I love it. I'm trying to go for a kind of a Bayonetta feel to her.
All abordo.
Yeah. So yeah, this has been. Unless you have anything else to add, this
Nope.
was our.
That's
this
good.
was our pacing episode.
And can I say, for this episode, pretty good pacing.
Oh yeah, it was perfect pacing considering the time limit that we gave ourselves.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, if you liked this episode and you want to have your questions answered, or you want to, talk shop about tabletop role-playing games, feel free to go to our website at www.fandomroulette.com and scroll down to the bottom where there's a little form where you just kind of fill out your internet handle, the nature of your question. Make sure you put like LoreMasters Investigation or something to determine that it's a conversation piece you want to talk about, and then talk and like just ask us questions. For the time being, I've got several questions that we can kind of fall back on if we don't get like direct fan responses when we do this, but I'm really excited to continue these conversations, especially from because I know at least in our dynamic, I'm kind of the forever DM, and it's nice to have like a player and a DM talking like together in that fashion,
Yeah.
But with one of our other shows, the One Shot, I will not be the only one being the forever DM. Now you get to experience the joys of it. But yeah, check out our website.
Yeah.
At www.fandomroulette.com. All of our episodes for LoreMasters Investigation will be put up there when they go live. And our other various new shows that we're working on. We're really excited to push this kind of new tabletop role-playing game, we'll call it initiative, forward. And so if you want to send us like fan requests, letters, emails, stuff like that, if you don't want to use the website, you can just send us a regular old email at fanroulettepodcast@gmail.com. All these new shows and all these things, they're going to be in the same place the Fandom Roulette podcast is. We're on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Play, all your RSS feature catchers, YouTube, all those things. We're on them. Just search Fandom Roulette.
Yeah.
We're also doing the social media stuff. I know that's probably like the fucking oldest way to have said that. I'm the most trendy human being on the planet. But we're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. If you're looking for updates about what the hell is going on with Fandom Roulette and all that stuff, check out our Twitter at fandomr_podcast. That is our handle. You can check Facebook for the same thing. Just search Fandom Roulette. And if you're looking for kind of our, slice of life nerd stuff that we're doing, because this isn't the only thing we do, you can check out our Instagram and check out the funny memes that we share and like just the general pictures of things that we're working on. These moments are super fun. We enjoy interacting with the audience, and we appreciate you for listening to our stuff. So thank you. You're cute.
Please remember to rate, review, subscribe, leave a comment, slam the bell. We love hearing from you. Bell. We love hearing
Give
back
it a kiss.
from you. There weren't any explosions in this one. I'm sorry.
See, we got it right at the end.
Oh man, that was some delayed. I think I was delayed from the one shot episode. But anyway, thank you guys so much for listening to LoreMasters, a subsidiary of Fandom Roulette. And signing off, this is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
And as always, stay nerdy.
Stay super nerdy.